Hello, another day, another quarantine day with Abe. Again, I'm not vlogging any of this. This is not really a vlog. This is more of a little discussion thing that is in my mind in which I want to talk about. If you guys are interested in like how do I maintain my sanity or how do I survive the 14-day quarantine in Korea, go ahead and check my videos. The links are down below or in my channel. Check it out. You truly do not want to miss it. Today, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the differences between the United States and South Korea and how they handle COVID. These are obviously just my opinions and from what I have seen from both countries. So most of you know that I lived in Korea for a couple months when the pandemic was like starting in the United States or like was in the rise. And then I went back to Chicago for my clinical rotations and then I came back here. Something I just noticed are how different both countries approach the coronavirus. Let's first talk about the airports because it's like fresh in my mind. So the airports are very, very different. When I arrived in O'Hare, it was just like what it used to be. Normally, you just land, go out, you fill out like this form and then you check out and then you get your bags and then you get like these forms that talk about how you need to wear your mask, maintain safety protocols in the state and in the counties, follow them, it's mandated. And I just went home. I called an Uber and then I went to where I was gonna stay. When you arrive to Korea in Incheon airport, it's very different. Both times it was like this back then and then now. I would say though, this time around, it just became a lot more smoother and just a lot more quicker. So essentially you land and then you walk out. However, you have to form this line to like this like check-in kind of situation. They measure your temperature and they check for all these things. You have to fill out a lot more forms than per usual. And then you have to download this app. This app will keep track of where you are while you are specifically under quarantine. Once you enter like a certain part of like a line or like the station, they will call wherever you're staying or like your family members to make sure that they will quarantine with you. Obviously for me, it's different. I'm by myself, but they did call my mom to make sure like, oh, he's gonna be by himself. No one's gonna be with him. And just making sure all these standards are followed. And then once you pass all these stations, which is actually really smooth, by the way, you get your stuff, you hand people your forms. They give you a lot of paper on how to maintain your quarantine and how it's very strict. And the fact that you have to follow these guidelines, it's really laid out for you in these sheets. And then in Korea, while in the US, you could just call an Uber and just dip. You can't really do that in Korea. If someone's picking you up, they like get all their records and you have to like answer a lot of questions or whatever. But for me, I can't just call a call taxi. They call it for you and then they call you to go to the taxi and you can't go anywhere else but to the taxi. So it's very strict, which I think is very, very safe. Which leads me to the next topic of quarantining. In Korea, you have to maintain quarantine. If you came from another country in Korea, you have to maintain a 14-day quarantine and it's very strict. You cannot leave, can't even go get groceries. I know a lot of people that smoke, they can't smoke at all. You just can't leave. Compare that to the US, you only have to quarantine if you came from a certain country or a certain state. And that's it. But in the US, of course, it is a lot harder to track who is maintaining their quarantine and who isn't. And also when I did test positive in Chicago, the doctors that I did talk to, they were like, yeah, you should maintain quarantine. You have to. But then like things like if you really need to get food, you should get it delivered. The vocabulary they used didn't really seem too strict. Obviously for me, I maintained everything. That's the quarantine process, which kind of makes me want to go talk a little bit about masks. In Chicago, even though they give you these pieces of paper saying you have to follow the mask guidelines and stuff, when I went to go curbside pickup a lot of times, people inside stores just weren't even wearing masks. I was super appalled. I don't know what it is, but yeah, people just don't really like wearing masks. There is like a strict guideline for these stores. Like you do have to wear masks. You have to maintain social distance inside the stores. But from what I saw, let's just say a lot of protocols were broken. In Korea though, if you are caught not wearing a mask in public, you are fined. I don't know how much the fine is, but you are for sure fined. My opinion is just wear your mask. Remember when in Korea there was like a mask shortage because everyone was trying to just cop masks, but in the USA, everyone was just getting toilet paper? Man, And for those that did hoard toilet paper and like sanitizers back then, look how stupid you look now. Because when I went to Chicago, toilet paper and all that stuff wasn't limited edition anymore. It wasn't like a holy grail. That's just another thing. I do want to talk about the whole testing procedures between the two countries. I can't say for a fact that all of USA is like this. It's just my experience in Chicago. But in Korea, the testing procedures are very strict. Like strict to a point where the person that's testing you is literally behind a glass container almost, and they put their arms through like these tubes, in like these rubberized tubes, and then they test you through that so that they are enclosed in a space where I'm not breathing the same air. It almost looks like, do you remember in Endgame where Tony Stark is trying to piece together the nano gauntlet with the stones? It feels like that. That's how safe they are here. But yeah, but in the US, now this is what I had to deal with in Chicago. They literally just give you the swab and a tube for you to put it back in. You're supposed to do the testing on your own. They do give you a sheet of paper, but because I got tested before this, I kind of knew like how much I had to do. But there were so many people that were like, okay, how do I do this? Very confused, and they were asking questions even with the sheet of paper, because even when I saw the sheet of paper, I was like, this doesn't really answer everything. Even me, I got confused a little bit, and I didn't know how much I had to stick it in my nose. After I finished my test and I gave it in a tube and then they collected it, a couple minutes later, my nose started bleeding. So I was like, oh, I feel like a professional should have done this. Anyways, both tests are accurate. I guess that really covers it, and it's just something I wanted to make a little video on, that these two countries are very different. Obviously, I'm not talking about the cases and numbers differences. That's just something I noticed coming back and forth during this pandemic. But yeah, I guess that concludes quarantine thoughts with Abe. I really want to get out of here.